Welcome back, everyone. I'm delighted to be heading over to Connecticut in the USA. I don't know what the weather's like over there today. It's a sunny day here in Oxford, and I think it's been nice in Amsterdam and Lisbon as well. We're delighted to welcome Ripi Singh, who, along with Johannes Vronis, whose name I see there also on the presentation, one of the most influential people in terms of ND 4.0 and what that means, particularly in terms of digitalization. Welcome, Ripi. Ripi is going to talk today about how to create your ND 4.0, how to create your digitalization roadmap. So I'm very happy to hand over the floor to Ripi. Looking forward to your talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you for having me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you may be. Delighted to be here one more time, talking about NDE 4.0, a subject that brought me and Johannes very close. And actually, in the last 3-4 years, we have worked so closely that it is very difficult to even separate what is exclusively mine, what is exclusively his, and what is joint. So most of the time, when we make presentations, we make sure that we do respect that this was a teamwork, what's being presented to you. So let me share with you a little bit about me. I love what I've learned over the last 30 years. It's been a great journey. I started off as a professor of aerospace engineering. That's where, in the beginning, I learned about cracks and corrosion, aging airplane, life extension. Did a bit of NDE at that time. Then I had a chance to work in the industry for a while, technology leadership, jet engines, renewables. About 8 years ago in 2014, I started my own innovation coaching practice. I now flap my jaws and help people understand things which are sometimes complicated all over the world. That brought me in touch with Johannes in 2018, started talking about NDE 4.0. We got special issues of materials evaluation. We brought the international community together. There's a handbook of NDE 4 recently released by Springer, a very good volume to refer for anything. Johannes and I have also written a book on NDE 4.0, which talks a lot of what I'm going to share today with you. What I love to do is understand why we should be doing NDE 4.0, how to go about doing it, what does it mean, and let's not forget the human element. And when we talk about human element, there is more to human-machine interaction. There are things around ethics, diversity, human-machine co-working, and all that aspects. Those are my interests today. So today's talk, next 35 minutes or 30 minutes or so, I'm going to touch upon 3 topics. Normally you say start with the why. I'm going to start with the what. I want to first define what is NDE 4.0, what are the various generations of inspection, and what has changed significantly that we talk in terms of transformation. Then we'll go on why should we care for this? And then once we know why and what, how do we go about it? So the title talks about how to create a roadmap. I want to spend more time on that topic. That's been a major challenge with the audience. Over the last 3 years that Johannes and I talk about the subject, the feedback we received was, hey, Ripi, that's great. You create a beautiful vision for us, but how do we connect it with where we are today? So to help with that connection, about 6 months ago, we started creating documents around how do you actually go about digital transformation. So I'll share that with you. Many of you may have seen this picture. If not, I'll share with you what this picture is about. This person in the center is Bertha Benz. She is wife of Carl Benz, the founder of Mercedes-Benz automobile. This is in Germany. And this is the very first car and the very first female driver who took that car on a long distance journey. On August 5, 1888, she drove this car 115 kilometers along with her 2 sons, and she snuck out of the house at 5 a.m. while Carl Benz was still sleeping. She wanted to prove to the world that this is worth pursuing. Okay. Now I want you to imagine if you're taking a long distance trip and this is the first car, just imagine how many gas stations exist on the way, how many repair shops exist on the way, what was the condition of the roads, if any, at that point, what would have she faced in 16 hours that she spent going 115 kilometers. And that transformed mobility forever. Fast forward. What has happened in the transformation? What has happened in the transportation transformation sector? We had first car 1867 actually steam powered. Then came the gas powered cars. We've seen Bertha's car, then here's a Ford car. But eventually all of this transportation became popular when we had the infrastructure, when we had the roads, highways, bridges, traffic rules, regulations. This transformed. Infrastructure was very important to actually transform mobility. Car alone was not enough. In the same sector, what is happening today? Well, we got into digital GPS, digital speedometer, and now we are getting into self-driving cars, completely digitalized car. But is that enough? No. You also need a digitalized infrastructure. Just like transportation had to require and build an infrastructure to really change the lifestyle of mobility, for digital transformation to be fully effective, we need the infrastructure as well. So just keep that in mind. So as we go through the process of transformation, we individually can transform products, we can transform processes, but the real value comes when the infrastructure also changes. And somehow we have to collectively work for that as well. Just give you a little case study with a client we worked on. This is trying to do the first article inspection of a injection molded part using coordinate measuring machine. It used to take 4 hours and you get 120 critical data points. When this activity was digitized, you do a 3D scanner and you get a full profile point cloud 4 times faster, 2.5 times cheaper, right? So this is good. We know this. This is the digital transformation at the device, gadget, or action level. And we call it digitization. The next level is called digitalization. And we can think of digital transformation of the process of executing first article inspection, where it begins with the CAD, you have a tool design, you make the tool, you build the prototype, you do CMM. 120-point check, it doesn't meet, you go redesign the tool. You redesign the tool 2 to 3 times. But if I replace the CMM with a 3D scan, I do a volumetric comparison. We have actually reduced the number of tool redesigns from which was typically 2 to 3 to only 1. And speed up is instead of 7 days, a day and a half. Do we stop here? No, we can go further. We can also digitally transform how the feedback goes and gets used in the tool redesign. If I bring artificial intelligence and put that as a part of tool redesign, I can probably get to a point where the machine, the AI has learned enough that the tool design process becomes so robust that the very first time it works out well. So you still do volumetric comparison, but you do it mainly to verify the part, not just inspect and redesign. So we can actually cut down complete redesign activity. First time, right out of the gate, good thing. So digitization, digitalization. What would digital transformation look like? Stay with me. I'll talk about that in a moment. 4.0, right? We have all been hearing about it. What does it mean? And what does it mean from an inspection perspective? Well, let's first look at the industrial revolutions. Right? We know this one. Steam, first one, second electricity, third one computers, fourth one is connectivity, all that. What it did was the industry 2.0 made us the master of the physical world, production, supply chain, stuff like that. Industry 3 made us masters of the digital world. The Industry 4 makes us the master of digital physical world, where we can go from physical reality to a digital model, from a digital model to physical action, and have it in a closed loop in a manner to continuously add value. That's what distinguishes 4 from Industry 3. Many of us are still confused. We think robotics is Industry 4.0. It's Industry 3.0. An autonomous robot is getting close to Industry 4.0. Even that is 3.5, 3.8, not 4.0. Until you can close the loop over and over again, you're really not at what is called digitally transformed system or environment. You may also hear terms Industry 5.0. I'll tell you what, if it comes from a university or a research lab, let them figure out what that would look like. If it comes from somebody in the marketing and sales, just watch out. It's just a keyword they want to use to show that they know more than others. I don't think we know what Industry 5.0 would look like as of now. We haven't fully mastered 4.0. So let's get a handle on digital physical world first before we start talking about 5. How about revolutions in NDE? Sometimes we tend to think the NDE 1, 2, 3, 4 is in parallel with Industry 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me clarify, that is not the case. That is not the case. The revolutions in NDE are not equivalent to revolutions in industry. We had human senses even 200,000 years ago, where we were trying to figure out what is happening. If you are sitting under a tree and tree is about to fall, you will hear it before it drops on your head. Right? We have used vision, smell, taste to figure out whether things are good or not. So humans have been doing non-destructive inspection in some sense for a long, long time. We'll just call it 0 for now. What we define non-destructive inspection 1.0 is when humans figure out how to amplify surface anomalies, how to see things on the surface which human senses alone cannot pick very easily, whether it's a magnifying glass, a stethoscope, a dye penetrant, a mag particle, anything that allows me to see smaller and smaller defects on the surface was in a sense a revolution at that time. Even today, if you develop a new dye penetrant, I still qualify that as NDI 1 because it's still limited to surface. The 2 is our ability to go beyond the surface, to see things which are otherwise hidden, whether it's X-ray, ultrasound, eddy current, whatever, something that allowed me to see behind the surface, whatever was hidden. That's kind of revolution. That changes the game. Right? Now I am able to see anomalies in casting, forging, anywhere else, things that are otherwise hidden. The 3 is what we define in terms of digital piece of it. And there is a reason why we align 3 with 3 so that it's easier to understand. Now, with the digital world, you are able to exchange data much more rapidly. You're able to analyze it, you're able to simulate, you're able to do lots of things which were earlier not possible alone in the physical world. So that caused the 3rd revolution. So what about the 4th one now? In 4th one, we want to be able to bring so much data that we have talked about all morning, analyze it in a manner that was not possible before, combine it, synthesize it, extrapolate it, simulate it, analyze it, look at it in any particular thing, and I want to be able to see ahead in time. I want to have an intelligent foresight. I want to get to a point where I can see things which are yet to actually appear. Even the instruments cannot see it. You know how sometimes you come up with 6th sense, you say, my gut tells me something is going to happen. You know how a mother watching the child play in a playground can know a few minutes before that my child is now about to fall off the swing? How does she know that? She knows that from experience. She knows that because she has seen enough. Today, the machines have seen enough and machines have learned enough that they can extrapolate a lot of data, put that things together and help you see the future. So that's what we call as NDE 4.0. Get to a point where it's radically different from what we are doing up until yesterday in terms of just digitally data sharing and digitally processing, to be able to see things before they appear. If you've seen TV serials like Person of Interest, if you've seen movie like Minority Report, they're all talking about how AI can be used to see crime before it even happens. Same thing over here. Anyway, so that's what that's where we are thinking of that the technology and ecosystem of inspection ought to go. Yeah, we've seen robots. Is it NDE 4.0? Well, if it's not in a closed loop, it's probably not. We can argue about it. AI taking pictures. I think we heard a couple of seminars this morning. They were all focused on this side. So we know this is all digitalization. This is all digital transformation at a process or an inspection event level, not yet at the ecosystem level, not a digital transformation as of now by themselves. Augmented reality, we've seen enough examples of that. If this robot were to become fully autonomous and can go in and inspect and decide where to zoom, when to zoom, inspect, and take decisions and provide the data that you need and then help you predict, and then tell itself that I must come back and inspect the same thing 3 months from now, now you hit the NDE 4.0. What's the technology suite for NDE 4.0? It started off with 5 things about 7-8 years ago. Then this technology suite has grown and it continues to grow. This is from a report which is 2 years old. I checked up, I've not found an update on this, but I'm sure things have increased. And if not, they will. Let's be prepared that the technology suite, the digital technology suite for us will continuously evolve. An inspection may use one or more of these. A single inspection event or an inspection procedure may use one or more of these, but an inspection ecosystem will use all of them somewhere or the other. So we got to be familiar with all of these aspects. Only then we can identify what to pick when. A part of making the roadmap is to focus on the objective first and then figure out what technology to use. However, so many times we fall in the trap of picking up the technology first and then looking for an application. So you guys, you got to think about purpose, objective, and that's where I'm going in a couple of minutes. So how do we define NDE 4.0? A long-winded definition which covers why, what, and how is on your screen. It's the cyber physical NDE, which comes out of Industry 4.0 digital technologies, physical inspection methods, and business models. You got to put those 3 things together for a purpose. And the purpose is enhancing inspection performance, integrity engineering, decision making for safety, sustainability, quality assurance, as well as providing relevant data that can be fed back to the OEMs to improve design, production, and maintenance. One of the reasons the definitions get long is when we have a team of 15-20 people and we want to kind of agree on a definition. This is what happens. So a lot of countries have actually come together to contribute to what this looks like as of now. But in short, I could compress this to it's a convergence of NDE and Industry 4.0 technologies for social safety, economy, and reliability. So that's in short, if we want to say what is NDE 4.0, it's NDE plus Industry 4.0 for safety, economy, reliability. That's what it is all about. To me, it's the ability to see or detect what was unthinkable before. That causes NDE to reach the next generation of inspection. Why should we care? I think we want to care because of safety, economy, right? We just mentioned that. But let me also see how the revolutions in maintenance have happened. Okay. We have gone from maintaining intuitively, live and learn, to doing precautionary factor of safety piece and start inspecting at that time. Then we went on to preventive maintenance, talking about things like safe life, fail safe, NDE grew at that time. Then we got to a stage where we started doing predictive maintenance and using philosophies like damage tolerance. The NDE grew even bigger. The place where Industry 4.0 can take us is prescriptive handling, inspection, maintenance. That's where NDE 4 takes you. Just like a doctor prescribes medicine for every patient, and depending upon what that patient's health care needs are, this is your surgical requirements, this is your medicine, this is your dietary requirements, this is your physical activity, lifestyle changes, that's what we mean by prescriptive handling. So we can get down to a single asset and handle it by that asset. That's what Industry 4.0 promise is all about. Prescriptive NDE for individual asset. So if we have an asset, a physical asset, we create a digital twin. We use connectivity, bring all the data, all the way from the time it was manufactured, any in-service inspections. We capture all of that in the digital twin. We create a knowledge base for the asset. We visualize that through augmented reality. We run simulations. We do figure out where the damage is going to go, deploy things like AI, play what if scenarios, and come up with how do we handle this system. We prescribe do's and don'ts in terms of maintenance, repair, deploy 3D printed spare parts, tools, all of that, essentially closing the loop between physical world, digital twin, through a human as of now, back to the physical world. That's what a prescriptive NDE could do. Prescriptive NDE can change the perception of NDE from something that otherwise managers view as cost center. And the new way to look at could be it's a value creation activity. It can actually change the paradigm for how NDE is perceived because it's no more about go, no go, or pass, fail. It's about data that is being used to bring economic value, data that is being used to improve the product design, performance, and everything. For the time being, as long as we are in this transition phase, while we have an opportunity where we can actually get all three together. In a normal project or in a normal evolution, if you think about safety, speed, and cost, you can only choose two. The third one is an outcome. For the period of transformation that's happening, we can actually get all three. That's where NDE 4.0 is highly valuable in the next 5 to 10 years. I'll give you an example around POD. We all know what probability of detection is. And typically, I come from aerospace world. I know very little about oil and gas, but we use 1995 crack size. And we tend to look at an equipment from intrinsic capability perspective, but really in field, the system has a reliability because of human factors, interaction between application and equipment, and the 1995 crack size slips. What we want to do is use digitalization, like robotics, automation, all that stuff, to encash that opportunity and move the reliability back to capability. But there is more to it. If I bring in digital twin, I can actually go past the intrinsic capability of the equipment itself. I can get sixth sense. That's the value proposition of digital transformation that I spoke about 5 to 7 minutes before. This is the graphical representation of what I was explaining earlier as to how we can see things that we were not able to see before. So in the same digital physical human loop, we say that an inspector in the NDE4 ecosystem will be able to detect an anomaly on the digital twin before the inspector can pick it up on a physical asset or an instrument in today's system. So that's the power of what 4.0 can do for us. That's what I call sixth sense. I'm still using the term sixth sense that I started using about 2 years ago. I recently read a couple of articles. They're beginning to call artificial intuition. No, same thing. Go from artificial intelligence, deploy artificial intelligence to get to artificial intuition. So machine now has a gut feeling, just like we humans have it. There are lots of other use cases. I will not go into those, but they are all around use of NDE data. They're captured in various books and publications you can look up. But I just wanted to show you it's not just cost. There are other values that this will bring. But think about it. Once we have an opportunity that NDE is not only about safety and quality, but actually creating economic value. It's not a cost center anymore. It's a value creator now. Because it can take the maintenance to a whole new next level, what I define as prescriptive maintenance. Now let's talk in the second half of my talk here as to how do we create a robust roadmap. We all want to address safety issues. We all want to pursue business values. We already got that. But we must understand that digital transformation is a journey. And how do we take that journey? Let's understand that one. As a NDT, we use equipment. You have inputs, you have outputs, and you take decisions. To do that, we use equipment with NDT procedures and people, and that becomes a process. Multiple processes controlled with a leadership, they roll up to form a company. Multiple companies with a governance body, consumers put together, rolls up to what we call as ecosystem. Okay. A lot of times we tend to think at a process level, and a lot of times we tend to think at an equipment level. And that sometimes limits how far our roadmap would go. We need to take a broader view as well to tie up the roadmap to really bring a long-lasting value. The higher up we are able to go, of course, it is difficult to go higher up. The higher up we are able to go, the better is the value extraction from digital transformation. Here is a simple graphic. If we were to take that ecosystem piece, if you just make your equipment digital and input outputs are digital, this is what is called digitize. If people understand the digital skills, you have procedure, which is automated workflow, that's all digitized. The entire process is now transformed. It's called digitalization. The two talks we heard this morning were more in the scope of digitalization of inspection activity. If you can handle the governance and the leadership and make leadership digitally savvy and accept it so that every value stream in the company is now digitalized, then you get to digital transformation. This is where a significantly higher value begins to show up. This is where the companies can now think of different business models. They can now think of how you send data to the consumer, how you actually monetize things that earlier at a process level were not possible. If you ask me a question, what happens if ecosystem and consumer and governance are also digitally transformed? Yes, we have a new term for that. I would not share it today with you because we haven't yet published it, but there is an aspect to the entire thing becoming green. And we'll talk about it in October sometime. Okay, so that's what a digital transformation would look like. So if you have to go from equipment to processes to company level, it's going to be a journey because all equipments, all procedures have to actually become digital for the process to be digitalized, and all processes and leadership need to get involved. Their decisions are aided by digitalized systems. They are communicated through digital processes. Then the company gets a digitally transformed look and behavior. And this is not an overnight activity. This could take 3 years to 10 years. And this requires continued, sustained investment and leadership commitment for that to happen. So major steps in a roadmap would be, first, You kick it off, you be clear of a purpose, why you want to digitally transform. You need to look at the ecosystem. You need to look at the context, internal context, external context. And then you create a roadmap team, because it's not a one-person job. And it should not be from top down where the boss says, go do this. Because I'm sorry, the bosses don't know everything today. It's changing so fast and there are so many aspects to that. You have to build a roadmap team. Then that roadmap team needs to refine the context. What's happening outside of the company? What's happening within the company? And what will happen tomorrow? You have to also have a prospective context. It's not about snapshot today. You have to take things like pestle trends, political, economic, social, technical, environmental, legal, and now even pandemic. Refine the context. Once you've got your context right, review it. Review it with the leadership in terms of both what are the 4.0 principles, what are the governance requirements, what are the ethical constraints, and what would be success metric, your KPIs. Pick those up. Now the ball comes back to the management court. Now the management ought to build a roadmap which is in terms of 3 horizons. Horizon 1, 6 to 12 months, 18 months. That's more like tactical. What are we doing now? Where it's funded, it's clear, the outcome is clear, the technologies are mature, you know you can execute with higher certainty. Horizon 2 could be 2 years to 5 years. Okay. You really don't know all of it, but you know some of it, you know what is emerging, you know how to put them together. You may or may not define all the metrics for success at Horizon 2, but that Horizon 2 is something where you invest more like 15–20% of your effort, and at some point that would become a part of your Horizon 1 every 3 months, 6 months when you come to revise. And Horizon 3 is far out there. So when I'm talking about artificial intuition, when I'm talking about sixth sense, that's like Horizon 3. Okay. Build your plan with products and services and technologies that will address the purpose. Then got to address the competencies required. We tend to undervalue the types of competencies we need to bring in to make something happen for digitally transform an inspection system. Of course, after that, you lead the execution, let the leadership validate it, put resources, rally everybody behind that vision, behind the roadmap, start execution. And when you're managing, you guide and monitor. You will have to make lots and lots of changes as you go along. So be prepared for that. And I'll talk a little bit more about changes in a couple of minutes. These changes could lead to a change in plan. These changes could also lead to a change in context. So be prepared to loop back and go through the cycle all over again. It can happen. How big of a loop back you do depends upon how fast the external context has changed. There are NDE 4 principles. There are a lot of them. We have derived them from Industry 4.0, and we've taken into account the nuances of inspection, and we've listed these 8. They're well published. I will not read them over here, but I'll be happy to share. Anybody who needs it, just send me an email. We'll share the document we are about to release on this one. But please take an ecosystem context. Think about who are the major players. There are 4 major players: the asset OEM, the owner operator, the inspectors, and the inspection system OEMs. And then there are lots of minor players, and then there are insignificant guys like me who float around flapping our jaws trying to share what we have learned so far. Internally, think about skills and competencies. We need to go way beyond NDE trade skills and soft skills. We need to become digitally savvy. We need to become data scientists. Otherwise, we cannot extract value out of data. This has to be a major part of your roadmap. People development, new skills development is an important part. If people think that their jobs will be gone, no, jobs will not be gone, but the skills will become obsolete. And it is a shared responsibility for the employee and the employer to continuously reskill the staff. And that's got to be a part of the roadmap, because that is an important piece of investment. There are lots of adoption challenges. The four big categories for adoption challenges are leadership style. Hierarchy is not going to work in Industry 4.0. Real-time communication has a new significance. It's not just machine, even people in the loop. And the competition is highly unpredictable at the moment. Technology selection. We do have a challenge over there. Number one is connectivity. We have challenge with standardization. Second challenge is vendors. Whenever any of my clients want to do digital transformation, they get 6 guys knocking at the door with 6 different headsets for augmented reality and 12 different platforms for artificial intelligence, and they can't figure out which one to adopt. Knowing very well, many of them will be obsolete very soon. And some of these new technologies that we talk about, when machines begin to think like with AI and ML, they raise a new concern around ethics. And that's a subject that we have extensively made an effort to understand and still do not fully get it. But it's a topic that we must all be cognizant of. Workplace acceptance is a third thing. There's a serious fear of failure, there's a resistance to change, and also fear of becoming overly dependent on technology, where if and when the technology gives me a wrong guidance, I still keep following it. I have done it many times, followed the GPS onto a dead end. This can happen with us. And talent development, we already talked about it. So there are lots of adoption challenges within a company, and your roadmap must identify these and address them with proper actions, with proper processes, with proper incentives for humans, because we are still an important part of the system. So I'm going to go back to the journey that Bertha took. So after about 15-20 kilometers, she needs gas. Where is she going to get the gas? There are no gas stations. So you go to a grocery store and you find out where can you find the oil that'll go into this car. At one place, the rubber came off from the tires. Now there's a problem, and she looks for a cobbler to fix that. Throughout her journey, she had series of hiccups. And since there was no infrastructure for the automobile, you had to fall back on other sectors and be creative about how you fix this car. Same thing will happen with the digital transformation roadmap. As you start working, you will get into a problem where this particular project is not bringing the value that we thought it will, and you have to define a new project. It can also happen that you have to pick up a new technology. This is not, the AI alone will not cut it. I have to combine this with robotics. Let's just define a new portfolio of technologies, which means now define new projects. And then there can be a situation where you have to take an entirely new direction. Okay. By the way, Bertha also, there were no maps or GPS at that time. We know that, right? And for her to get to her parents' place 115 kilometers away, she was repeatedly stopping and asking people for directions. And let's not forget that we may come up with new business models as we go along, and that can change our direction as well. So being able to pivot is an important part of the roadmap. That's how you create a robust roadmap. The robustness is not around creating a roadmap that you don't have to change. Actually, maybe I should add the word resilient on top of it. It's a roadmap. You plan it, but it's a mix of exploration and exploitation and continuous adjustment, because we don't know all of the uncertainties. That's what takes us. That's why humans are important. So Johannes and I have a couple of things going on social media platform. There's a lot of information that we share completely free, both on YouTube and on LinkedIn. Feel free to search for us, join this group, learn more. Handbook of NDE is out there by Springer. You can have it. The NDE 4.0 book is out there. Within about a month, we will release an NDE 4 management guidance document, exactly what I shared with you today, some of it in terms of ISO style, where it walks you through context, leadership, operation, continuous improvement, all of the steps that we are used to from the ISO standards. It's in that style, will guide you to creating a roadmap. We keep coming up with special issues, so there's more data that keeps coming out. There's a lots out there to learn. Once again, I'll close this chart with a selfie. If you want to be a leader, go get yourself a Chief Innovation Officer. If you want to follow a leader, well, first choose the right leader, but go hire yourself a Chief Risk Officer who can tell you whom to follow and how long to follow. And if you want to be neither of those, and if you just want to be an observer, you would need a Chief Prayer Officer, because this is coming fast, and we have to either lead it or follow. We just cannot sit and watch it kill us over. So with that, I would say thank you for tolerating me. There are a bunch of resources that are out there for you to take value from. Thank you, Martin. I'll take any questions that are there. I'll stop sharing.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much, Ripi. Very comprehensive introduction to the world of NDE 4.0. People feel free to add some questions to the chat. I've got some that I thought about when I was going along. You mentioned the NDE 4.0 infrastructure. What do you think is the main thing currently missing in the NDE 4.0 infrastructure?
Standardization is one thing that's missing. The data exchange standards. It's every organization is pushing for their own pieces. If that happens, you will be limited to what you can do within your own company. You remember how Sony had their own structure long ago when we started talking about digital cameras, but eventually we all came down to SD cards, and now it's all online piece of it. It's the technology standards that is the #1 barrier as of now.
I guess the obvious question in terms of the digitalization roadmap is how far are we along it? And I guess the answer is we don't know yet.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. We don't know the end point. So if somebody says, are you 10% there, 20% there? No, you don't know where the end is. And will it ever end? I actually think it will not end. If you look at how the transformation has happened, when did it start? If you go back to the hierarchy that I built in terms of processes, gadgets to process to company to ecosystem, we have started from the bottom up and we just keep moving. And by the time we are fully digitally transformed, there's probably biology that will come into it, and we'll get into cyber, physical, biological conference. So it'll be the next wave, and then the next wave, and then the next wave. We are in this exponential, continuously changing mode of transformation. Transformation is normal now.
Another thing I noticed is a lot of people often think of NDE 4.0 as being more to do with manufacture and manufacturing inspection, but I noticed in the slides you presented, you are talking about assets and infrastructure, and so maybe that distinction between service inspection and manufacturing inspection isn't really a distinction. Do you see any difference in the applicability of NDE 4.0 to one or the other?
Okay, so the difference comes from the purpose, why you do it. In the manufacturing world, you are doing it to create a product of a certain reliability, of a certain quality, right? In the service maintenance inspection world, you're doing it to extend the life of the asset, to make it more affordable, more available. I want it to be just last forever, not ask for any maintenance. So that's the primary objective where it is different. The second piece is, if you really understand the philosophy behind digital twin and the philosophy behind sixth sense, you have to capture the data all the way from manufacturing inspections and materials and piece and carry that with you through in-service. So one becomes a predecessor to the other one. So the digital inspection piece in the manufacturing side becomes a predecessor for the digitalized inspections in the in-service world.
A question at the bottom of the chat from Andrew Alexander Malcolm. How do we push beyond NDE 4.0 to the NDE-metaverse?
I do not know that. I really do not know that. I have not thought on that one yet. Thank you for identifying an area that I should be looking at this year.
Okay, thanks. I think a question I asked Johanna is really, where does digitalization of NDE end, or digital transformation of NDE end, and where does NDE 4.0 begin? Is it in the use of data analytics? Is it the way the information can be used by different people? What would you see as a distinction between digitalization of NDE and NDE 4.0?
Are you asking a question in terms of digitalization or digital transformation, or is it, can you clarify that distinction? Is there a distinct line? There's actually not a hard and fast line between any transition, right? But there are some major changes that happen when you can say, yes, I am now from here to here.
Yeah,
so I think it was. Rephrase the question, I'll try and answer it.
Okay, between digitalization of NDE and NDE 4.0.
Okay. So if I were to say NDE 4.0 is digital transformation, and digitalization of NDE is, you remember the 3 steps that I was showing? If it's about inspection process, which begins with issuing a work order, doing an inspection, catching the data and bringing it back, it's digitalization of NDE. You can even take it to a level of digital transformation of just that process. But you really want to think about how it gets integrated into the lifecycle management of the asset. You can really call it NDE 4.0 at that point.
Okay, thank you, Ripi. That's excellent. I had an answer from Johannes, so it's very interesting to get your answer as well, which compared very well. Do we have any more questions from the audience at the moment? None that I can actually see. We will hope to share the recordings after the event. There's so many different things Ripi talked about. If you do have some questions that we haven't been asked or haven't been answered, then please feel free to add those to the chat. So thank you very much again, Ripi. Particularly looking forward as well to October. We've got the first NDE 4.0 conference, which is in Berlin in Germany. So and you can find information relating to that on the internet. So thanks again, Ripi. Thanks for such a comprehensive introduction. It's a continual changing roadmap, and it was very interesting to see the different aspects you put there. So thank you again.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, guys. Thank you for tolerating me. If you have any questions, send me an email. You can look me up on LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever. I think with all these lectures over the last 2 years, it's very easy to find me through Google. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Ripi. Thanks very much. So just like to, Siga has actually had to head off to normally give a closing statement at this stage. Thank you very much to our 3 speakers today. We've gone all the way through from remote survey, remote inspection, looking at things like corrosion maps, and all to the whole journey and roadmap of NDE 4.0. Thank you all for joining us. The next Digitalisation Forum, HOIS Digitalisation Forum, HDF 15, is scheduled for May the 24th. So we'll share the information about that shortly, and we'll try and make the recordings accessible from this particular seminar. So enjoy the rest of the afternoon or morning where you are, and thank you again.